Good evening, Hobby World. Thanks for joining us tonight live for episode 60 of Personal Rips and Hobby Chat. Joining me tonight, as always, is Ken at Beans Beat Card Blog. I'm Herman, aka 3B Collection, and we have two guests tonight. First of which is Rich Klein from Klein's Corner, I guess I would say. Is that right, Klein's Corner?
Klein's Corner, Hobby Hotline,
all
sorts of fun things. Don't forget I'm still at County, which has really helped me learn stuff about tonight's topic. 5 years on,
right, and
not counting the 19 years I spent at Beckett, where it's also taught me a lot about tonight's topic.
And also joining us tonight is John Keating from that 70s Card Show, which his YouTube videos is kind of what spurred this topic tonight. I think it was it 39, 40 episode, your Pepsi glove disc?
You were right, it was 40, but I did 40 before 39 for some reason. So I lost count, so I released 40, then I recorded 39 after that.
Yep. So we've all had some sort of food issue card in our collection at some time or another. I never realized how far back they went until after watching your video and kind of diving into it and looking back into it and seeing, as far back as I think it was Heinz root beer.
Oh, it goes.
I think it's further back than that.
Yeah.
Right?
Come on, Cracker Jack 1914, 1915, caramel cards.
No.
It goes way back. I mean, it goes so far back.
But and another thing that I was looking at when you look up like food issue cards and stuff on Google or whatever you're searching on, I mean, technically you've kind of got to consider the 60s, 70s gum packs as food issue. But
Yeah.
The
What about that? There was,
John, there's something up with your video, with your audio.
Is it really? I should probably disconnect it. Let me try something else here.
Yeah, we got a lot of static.
You got static, John.
How's that? Is that any better?
That's better.
There you go.
So, what about the, as we know it, or as I know it, I guess in the 70s, it was really big in the 60s cereal stuff, but the Wheaties were around since the 30s, right, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, Wheaties went for like 15 years. I mean, there were Wheaties cards in the 30s and 40s and 50s. I'm not so sure about the 40s, but there were Wheaties cards in the 30s, and then there's a 51 Wheaties set, a 52 Wheaties set. I mean, as he talked about Hires root beer in 58. There's the Hunter Frank sets, Wilson's Wieners in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
There are SK Frank. I mean, there's a lot of really tough 50s items that are food sets. I mean, and then you get to the 70s, Armour era, where the cards are much more accessible. The Hostess cards, the Kellogg's cards, 80s, the Drake's cards are very accessible. Yep. They're on the panels of the back, backs of the boxes. So, I mean, they're really accessible. And then you even have T discs in the late 80s, like 8 different brands. And I mean, the history of food cards is the history of the hobby to some extent.
So let me ask you a question, Rich. When do you, Dr. Jim always talks about the FDA getting involved, making cards edible. When did that all come into play, do you think?
I'm not sure when that came into play, but I know that, like, for example, their edible cards actually supposedly exist. Wayne Grove, who owned a store here in Dallas, Fort Worth area, and actually was also a teammate of mine at Beckett, and has learned more about collecting, has forgotten more about collecting than I ever knew.
Possible.
Wayne said the 1976 Motorola set was issued in two fashions. One the way we know it, and one was an edible set. I've never tried it to see whether it was edible, but he swore it was an edible set.
That's bizarre.
Now didn't Post cereal got away from that, didn't they, by putting the cards on the outside of the bag?
Yeah, well, they were on the boxes, right? That's why
Yes.
there's so many different
Yeah.
cuts. So
And then don't forget the 61 set. And Ken, why aren't you wearing a blue shirt like the rest of us?
Because Dale Earnhardt didn't drive a blue car.
Fair enough.
Well, actually, he did early in his career, but
Yeah, I was
anyway.
going to say the yellow and blue Wrangler car he did.
Yeah.
But 61 Post is an interesting set. I mean, there's always these weird scarcities in all the Posts, and then the 62 and 3 Jello and the 62 Canadian Post. But 61 Post, you could order a bunch of the cards directly from Post. So you have the perforated cards and then the cards cut from the box. So, I mean, if you really want to do a master 61 Post set, it's almost 400 cards.
Wow.
yeah,
So
they're all on the outside of the boxes.
Well, except for the ones you could order from the company.
Right.
That's why, like at the ComC database, we differentiate hand cut and perforated.
So what cereal company am I thinking about that put them on the outside? They put them in the box.
Kellogg's did that. Right?
Kellogg.
Right, Kellogg's did, from 70 to 83.
They put them
What's
outside of the cereal bag, but inside the box.
Inside the box in a cello bag. What's interesting is you could order complete sets from the factory of all the years,
All right.
except 71, which is why the 71 sets are so much tougher, because they did not have sets you could get from the factory in 71. And then 73 are what they call 2D sets instead of 3D. They're cards that look more like your average card. And then there was a 81, they dumped a large quantity onto the marketplace. So there is more 81 Kellogg's than any other year. But there are, again, even in Kellogg's, there are some variations along the way. There's a variation in every 71 Kellogg's set.
Mm-hmm.
Every card either has the date 1971 exograph or no date. So a 71 master set is 150 cards. And that's, it's affordable, but, a decent Kellogg's card is $10 for a common. It's going to, unless you get a really good deal, it's going to cost you a couple $1,000s to do a master 71 Kellogg's set, or more than all the other Kellogg's sets combined.
Mm-hmm. And you said that like Kellogg's really came on like 80, 81, but from what I saw, that the 80s was like the junk wax era of the food issue from everybody that came out. Because I mean, you had, I think that's about when Coke started, if I remember right. You had people like Red Lobster, M&M's, Kraft, Jiffy Pop, Nestle's, all of them came out with cards in the 80s.
You had Purina. You can get it with your dog food.
Yeah, Purina. I forgot about that one.
Long John Silver's.
Mm-hmm.
That's
The
like
Star
1990, and that's not even the first. Don't forget, Red Heart dog food is from the 50s.
Yeah.
And you could still order complete sets from the factories into the mid 70s from Red Heart.
That's crazy.
That's one reason so many Red Hearts survived in good condition, is they made so many that one year, and they kept sending them out. So as the collecting world grew, you could order them directly from you could order cards from the 50s directly from Red Heart into the 70s. And that wasn't unique at the time. A high school and college friend of mine named David Rubel found that you could order back issues of Sports Illustrated direct from the factory. Well, they overproduced issue number 1. He bought a couple hundred at like $5, whatever the current price was for a magazine, let's say $2.95. He bought like 500 mint copies of number 1, the 500 left from the factory. And so that's why you have a decent amount of Sports Illustrated number 1s in great shape left. That's why you have a bunch of good condition the Red Heart dog foods left, and Red Man tobacco. You got to make sure we don't conflate and confuse those two.
Mm-hmm. Off topic, but I am bidding on an auction for the number 1 issues of Beckett football and basketball currently, but I will tell no one where those are so that I win them. All right, I'll go back on mute now. Had to throw that out there.
So no, that's fine.
The the one thing about like food issue cards is they will pick like the majority of the cards on the packs or the issues or whatever were your higher stars. Like most of the older sets, every one of them had Mickey Mantle in it. They had Harmon Killebrew. They had Pee Wee Reese. I mean, they had the stars in them. But for a set builder, those sets had to be a nightmare because you couldn't like buy a box of 150 and sort them together and start the set. You was pretty much buying them one or two at a time, depending on how many they posted on the back.
People weren't doing it back then either. Rich will tell you that, most of the time you weren't obsessed with collecting a full set. You got what you got, and,
well, it's kind of like today. You wanted your player, and that's
Your mom's only going to buy so many hot dogs and bags of dog food, right?
Right.
And the other thing to remember is back in the day, there weren't a lot of collectors. I mean, if you've ever looked at the letters people have posted from, people like Buck Barker, he's got a small circle of collectors he deals with. It's not like, he has to deal, it was a big thing. Even in the early 80s, the first few issues of Beckett, 10,000 copies. So, in 1985, you have 10,000 copies of Beckett magazine produced. It's exploded since then. But think about it. If that's 10,085, what's, that's a quantum leap from what was in the 50s and 60s. There are collectors' books from the 50s and 60s that list a couple hundred collectors. And that was a big deal back then. And you wrote, you didn't have this type of communication. You had to sit and write letters and put it in a stamp and send packages. And, it was such a different world.
Yeah. Well, not to mention that I'm sure a lot of the players were released like regional. You wouldn't send a post cereal box with a Hank Aaron on the back of it to California versus up north when he was in Milwaukee or in the Northeast when he was in Atlanta. So that's something you're talking about across country. So, and like you said, there was no social media, no internet, no way of finding it other than just accidentally running up on it if it happened to make it across the country.
So imagine today's environment where I remember the 70s when you could go down the aisle and look at a back box of Twinkies and see who was on the back of that. And imagine today's environment when you could see who's on those boxes. It would be bigger than anything Target or Walmart has seen, right? That the people would be following Hostess trucks around and and beating a guy over the head in the aisle 9 for the Twinkie boxes. It's crazy that stuff was on display right there for the most part. You could pick which box you wanted with what players.
Right.
And I love the 70s Hostess because it turns out there's variations all over the place in those too. There's the difference between what the single pack Twinkies were and what was on the box. And there's also in 76, you have cards printed with black ink and cards printed with brown ink. I mean, it's pretty amazing if you really go deep into food issues. Just what a rabbit hole you can go into. And by the way, we should say hi to everybody in our chat. I see we have a whole bunch of people, so let's make sure we say hi to everybody in the chat. And I'm watching your comments and enjoying them. So I'll let Ken or Herman handle that.
Yeah, we'll jump back. Start at the top. We got Jenny in the middle with us. Bo, Matt, and who else we got? Zach, we got Dan. Let's see, and Donnie just jumped in. Welcome everybody. Glad you could make it. Donnie actually jumped over from Periscope. I think he usually watches on Periscope, but he can't participate in chat. And Peeps just jumps in. So he jumped over on YouTube so he can join in the chat. And that's usually the best way. I think about 95% of the people that watch on YouTube. So I didn't even realize we were on Periscope. So I guess that goes through Twitter.
You're the one in charge of this thing. How the hell did you not know we were on it?
I don't click Periscope. I thought Periscope went out of business.
Yeah, really, man.
That's the notification I got.
Are we on Tinder too?
Do I need to go looking for? Yeah, do I need to look for on Twitch and Plenty of Fish?
I give up on Twitch because there's a bunch of smart outlets over there. So I quit posting on Twitch.
Speaking of something, I did want to mention we do have a good group of people in the chat. I feel like John's channel only has like 35 subscriptions, and that is a damn shame. Yeah, I watched this video earlier, and it was somewhere in the low 30s. Come on, guys, get over there and subscribe to his channel.
Not a big self promoter, but I appreciate it, Ken.
Matter of fact, I've got it saved here. I'm going to throw his link up in the chat because I've thought the same thing. It's kind of, I don't understand how, you have 33 subscribers and I mean, you put out some content. So.
Well, I don't know whether I'm on the podcast. I don't know whether that hurts or helps, but I like to listen to stuff when I'm at driving or at the gym. So that's why I go long form, and that's why I do a podcast, because I like it to be accessible everywhere.
All right. So I dropped the link in the chat, so anybody that's not subscribed can jump over.
Oh boy, we're subscribing. Thank you, Herman.
I mean, I do. I listen at work, so to me, it's a mix of short and long form. Because I'm in the office usually by myself, except when Steph and Angela come up, and so it's me. Even though I have the door open, it's me, and I like background noise. So having a chat is wonderful to go.
What a I know it's been said a million times, but what a hobby where you can get anything and everything and all modern, vintage, pre-war. Everybody's got channels, and it's just such a great experience. And here we are talking about food issues, right? There's so many different rooms to go in this hobby. We're lucky. We're all very lucky.
One thing is, we haven't touched, I don't think this has been touched upon with anybody talking about, we'll call it, and I'll put it in air quotes, the Fanatics takeover of the sports card hobby and their takeover of Topps. Fanatics is pretty good at the promotion. I wonder if they've even looked yet into, hey, can we partner on food issues? Because, the general pop, if you really want to explode the hobby, getting stuff into the general populace is a way to go. Baseball.
See, I wonder if kind of what in part killed food issues in general, and I know, we've had the Utz, we've had the market side pizzas lately. But I'm just of the assumption, and maybe I'm wrong, but I just assume that they want too much money for those. They don't care. They don't care if that stuff's out there. It was different in the 60s and 70s when guys were making, 5%, 2% of what they're making now. That extra $100 they got because those food cards were out there, that was good money. Now, these guys are making $400 million for half a season or something. So getting an extra couple grand doesn't mean squat to them. They don't care. And then the unions have to do the work. And we already know they're lazy. That's why they want contracts with just one card company. They don't want to put out the effort to do all that other stuff. So, take it for what it's worth, but that's my opinion.
Ken, I'll disagree slightly. It's not just the players' union; it's the license, it's the leagues too.
Well, leagues, players' unions, regardless.
And one of the things is, and I have a friend of mine who does licensed photos, and he had an NFL license, and they loved him. But one year, they, like 25 years ago, they cut the number of licenses from 400 to 40 because they didn't have to hire as many people to keep up with the licenses. But for the unions, you think they would want to have their products out. One of the things the unions are doing right now is they're paying the players each month, while they're being locked out, with their, quote, war chest. The owners are billionaires, so they don't have to worry about a war chest. But it's an interesting dilemma where
I mean, I still feel like there's some level of it being on the union because, let's be honest, there's not a whole lot. You could sell ones without MLB logos or put them into product. It may not. I mean, you do it. Panini does it, and people still buy it. So, I mean, I just, like I said, that's just how I look at it.
Let me ask a question here.
I'm a negative Nancy and a grumpy Gus. So,
Herman, what's the most popular of the big four sports right now?
The most popular.
What's your gut tell you?
Probably basketball.
Ken?
it's always going to be baseball.
You think, and not your favorite, but you think it's the most popular sport?
That's my least. That's my least. That's my least favorite. I'm saying baseball.
The energy in the market is basketball and football.
So why isn't baseball getting on board here to promote itself? Right? It makes no sense. It's essentially what Ken's saying is they could take the reins here and they could have cards in every bag of Doritos, right? Girl Scout cookies, everything. They can do all this stuff, but
I mean, hell, they don't even market their players.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm with you, Ken. They're being lazy. They're being greedy. It's one of those two things,
Well, you say that, and one thing I saw whenever I was looking into some of the food issue cards was, and I didn't know this. I knew Burger King had always, and you showed a Burger King card just a second ago.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that in '72, Burger King, their first, I guess you said, food issue sport card was football, and it wasn't a card. It was a disc, like a lid off of a milk, some type of milk lid.
And one thing I love about the Burger Kings, the 77 Yankees, what they did is they made the first 22 players from the 77 Yankees top set.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the 23rd player, and the one they missed, was Lou Piniella, who was from George Steinbrenner's adopted hometown of Tampa, Florida, and a personal favorite of his. And Mr. Steinbrenner got a little annoyed at Burger King. And in those days, Mr. Steinbrenner was not exactly the calmest gentleman in the world. There were probably yelling, screaming, and some four-letter words. And a Mr. Piniella card arrived and has been a very popular card in the hobby ever since. And it's a card that really has never gone up in value, and it's never gone down in value. It's just there. But if you see it, you know it's a good card.
Right. And something I wanted to throw out there, going further into the either being greedy or out of touch or lazy. Not all food issues, but let's pick specifically the cereal issues and some of those other ones. Who is cereal marketed to?
Kids.
What do we always say about kids? What have we said for the last 20 years?
They're our future.
We need kids in the hobby. I mean, like I said, I've been sitting here talking about in chat the 87 Kraft Home Plate Heroes. That's the first year I collected in 1988. That's not the reason I got into cards, but it was my first year collecting, and it sure as hell didn't hurt.
I still remember as a kid, we bought the cereal, the Kellogg cereals. And I got, and we didn't buy enough. I didn't buy enough cereal. I didn't eat enough cereal, but I pulled two cards from the two boxes we got. One was Ernie Banks. One is Willie McCovey. I always loved those cards. They were different than the Topps cards I had at the packs.
And they definitely made for it, especially at that point, definitely variety, because you did have only Top. You didn't have anybody else. Now, I mean, we've got, however many sets a year, and then multiply that by 247 parallels per product. And, but then, I mean, once you completed your top set, if you completed your tops or you did teams you got your favorite player, what did you do? I don't know, because at least when I started, there were 3 companies. In the second year I collected, there were 4, and then there were 5 in 89. But so what did you guys do as kids after you completed your set or your team set, or you did whatever? At least you got, like you said, something different, something unique by pulling them out of these.
You bought football cards, or you bought basketball cards, or even we bought hockey cards. You bought whatever was in front of you. Seriously, I mean, because you had, as you said, the cards weren't there, and they weren't being issued all year long. They were issued in series. You get to September, you're not buying baseball cards anymore. You're buying Series 1 or Series 2 football cards. You're buying football cards. And then January, February, you start buying basketball cards. That's what you did. You didn't go and buy 88 Score and then 88 Donruss and 88 Tops and 88 Fleer.
Your whole life shifted. You played Little League in the summer, then you played flag football or tackle football in the winter, then you moved inside and played basketball. That's the way.
And so you got the cards that went with those sports. I did that.
Yeah, and Bo brings up a good point too.
Yeah, I wanted you to bring that up because I have a counterpoint.
So do I, but yours is probably more eloquent.
And what I say is, I mean, he's right in my opinion. Now, you know what we say about opinions on this show, but
mine's usually right.
Yeah, but what if the card? But Bo, that's a great point. But what if the card is shiny? What if it's a shiny card? I mean, seriously, what if it's just instead of saying Panini, it says Panini and says Kellogg's, or it says Drake's, but and you have a chance for, somebody mentioned the Haynes cards. You have a chance for the autograph card. Yeah. I know they only made 10 of Jordan, but you can do those cards shiny if they're protected in a cellophane or an envelope. They don't have to be drab.
Mm-hmm. Well, and my counterpoint is I'm not saying there aren't kids in the hobby. What I'm saying is if you're putting them in cereal or you're putting them in front of them, you can conceivably get more kids. When we had this boom, and I see it, I've heard it on YouTube videos and podcasts. How many people out there still don't know that baseball cards are still a thing?
Mm-hmm.
There are millions of people that don't even realize these things are out there. And I'm sure some of them are the kids playing in Little League because they just don't have the exposure for, whatever reason. But it's about getting that exposure. It's a side benefit more than just the money, but it's hopefully getting more people into the hobby.
Even younger.
Yeah, and again, I don't disagree with what Bo's saying. I know they want that, but you've got to get them to start somewhere. A lot of times these kid collectors are collectors of guys who collected. So what I'm talking about is trying to get kids that don't really have a knowledge or don't have somebody that's interested in getting them into it. You lose that by not being on Kraft macaroni and cheese, General Mills cereals, and Hostess snack cakes, and Jimmy Dean frozen breakfasts. You lose those things.
Yeah, I see your point. I mean, you put.
Do I have a wrench? I'm going to go delete everything Bo types.
But I mean, I see your point. It's you put something out there for like the 7 or 8 year old that doesn't have a big brother that collects or a daddy that collects that doesn't know anything about cards, and he may watch baseball, and he sees his favorite player or a player that he knows, and then it just kind of sparks his interest.
See, these guys, baseball, the impetus for baseball to do this isn't to make it popular in our hobby. It's to get butts in the seats and have fans. So it's an advertisement, right? We look at everything as collectibles. It's an advertisement for them. That's what it always was.
Yeah, and they're all intertwined. I mean, how many of these food issues in reality have some kind of scarce high value? They're very minimal. They're the red hearts, although that's a dog food, not a human food.
It's the hot dog ones that have the hot dog juice on them. They're the
yeah. I mean, like I said, I've been talking about the 87 Kraft cards. Right. Those things aren't worth a damn thing, but man, I love those because they're nostalgia. Right. And like I said, it was part of my entrance into the hobby because in my hometown, I couldn't even get Fleer in 87. So all I had was Tops and Donruss. And I had put together like 3 or 4 sets of those. So at least I had something else.
Right.
And this is interesting. We're talking about being old. There's nothing wrong if you're older to have an accessible card set to get either. we all remember collecting it, and there'd be nothing wrong with having something accessible for people like us that's probably affordable. I mean, how many of us can't really afford the hobby the way we would like to afford it? And not everything has to be, not everything has to be money driven. Herman, after you finish your 72 set, where are you going to go? I know you're
Herman.
Well, thanks to John, apparently I have started the 1980 set. We talked about that last week, and I've got
a couple cards, did you?
Yeah, I've got some on the way. I'm looking forward to getting them and getting started on it.
I'll get you the Burger King set too, man. The 80 Burger King set.
The first card I'm gonna add to the set is going to be the Ricky Henderson rookie.
Do you have that already or no?
Yeah, that one I already have.
I thought you had it because when I was looking through the set I was building I came upon a Ricky Henderson rookie. It's from a collection I bought. So I was like, well, I'm not going to put that in because he already said he has it. So
yeah, I've actually had that one for quite a while. So yeah.
Well, once you have the Henderson rookie in 80, it's cruise control to finish the set from that.
And that's what me and Kim was talking about last week, and that's kind of what spurred this, discussion about the 80s between me and John. And I think between Ken and John, I kind of decided to go ahead and go for it.
I will tell you, as a vendor, I had 2 Henderson rookies in 2021. Neither lasted through the first day of any show I did.
Wow. It's amazing.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, we are in while we are, part of that boom is the nostalgia. I mean, how many guys, my age ish, give or take, 5-7 years came back and wanted, so that definitely makes a ton of sense. But it also means you had your cards priced correctly as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ken, I do know how to price cards.
I know.
But it's we're talking about Henderson. There's even some early Ricky Henderson food issues. I know he's in some of the early Kellogg sets, but there's a regional Granny Goose Oakland A set. I believe he's in 81 and 82. Could you imagine if they had done a 1980 Granny Goose A set with Henderson in it? That would have been a very interesting card. Because there are some rookie types. There are some rookie type cards in various food issues. There's a 78 Hostess, and I believe in Kellogg's Eddie Murray. There's a 79 Hostess Ozzie Smith. There's Dennis Eckersley's got 76 cards. Maury Wills doesn't have a Topps card till 67, right, except for that 60s card where he's the cameo on Luis Aparicio card. But he's got Post and Jello cereal 61 to 63. So there are some really interesting cards along the way on food issues of some of these key players too.
I mean, right. there have to be a few examples over time of the food issues where actually they came out the season before just because, for the most part, Topps didn't put them in until their second year, So where it's a food issue or a regional issue, you're not doing as much. You don't have all of that extra you have to do. So time is a little more on your side on some of those things.
So I want to drop back and answer a couple of the questions in chat. The first one was, the first one was for you, Rich, from Peeps. He wanted to know if any of those Hendersons, what the grades were.
I want to say they were probably 6s and 7s. They weren't. I don't think they were mint. They were not graded. They were raw, and I sold them each between $100 and $150.
Okay. And then Jenny wants to know what our favorite food issued card was. So she's too early to remember.
Well, Kim mentioned his, but let's hear John's.
It's got to be Kellogg's because to me, there's nothing like sitting at a table, right? When you're 10 years old, I love cereal, right? So sitting at a table, opening a box of cereal, digging your hand into the cereal, right? It's at the bottom somewhere, that card, pulling the card out and then pouring yourself a bowl of that cereal that you just stuck your grubby hand in and playing with a card that wasn't made out of paper. These cards were almost bionic, these Kellogg's 3D cards. So any of those Kellogg's sets right out of the box, I loved.
Mine would have to be, and mine's not as flamboyant or nothing, but mine was the Cracker Jack, the micro cards that come in the pack.
like they were the actual replicas of the Cracker
They were the
Jacks,
actual
and then,
replica.
and then they had the 91 tops as well. I remember.
Yep. That was probably my favorite, and I don't know if it's because I loved Cracker Jacks as a kid or it was just my favorite. What because I also remember like Josh said, I remember digging through boxes of Kellogg's and pulling the packet of cereal out before it's ever opened just to get to the card. It was, and I mistakenly thought it was Post that did that, but it was Kellogg's now that we mentioned it. But yeah, I'd have to say Cracker Jack.
So Ken, you collect the oddball stuff, right?
Some, I guess.
I mean, you've been around. I mean, you poke into that. You poke everywhere. What's any kind of oddball food issues you know of?
I mean, for me, the oddball ones are the Stark and Meyer and the Marhofer meats on the old Indianapolis 500 cards. And they were like somebody else had mentioned on, I think, the ones cards were the cons cards also attached to like packs of meat and stuff. Is that how those were distributed? Those
They were
60s
inside.
ones?
They were inside soaking up the hot dog juice.
Okay. Yeah, you can get some of that. Like I've seen some of the Stark and Wetzel ones where on the back, like you can see like where there's 3 lines where they were against. Now, I don't know if they were, like I said, I don't know if they were inside, if they were outside, and maybe that's more glue residue or some kind of whatever. But as far as oddball, I mean, baseball, I really don't have. I mean, there's nothing I can come up with that you and Rich probably don't already know. And honestly, you know, speaking about baseball, and you all know in general, I'm pretty vocal that I'm not a baseball fan because A, it's boring, and B, I got turned off by the strike in or lockout or whatever it was in '94, and it was never the same for me after that. So, you know, even my baseball card collecting kind of went downhill, and I moved to other sports. But yeah, for me, the oddballs.
Those racing cards really tough. Those food issues you're talking about.
Those two are tough. Yeah, they're pretty tough. I haven't seen. It seems like kind of like with my T36 racing set. It seems kind of like when there will be a find, like somebody will either sell off their collection or they'll find, you know, an estate sale, and then they'll come up in groups, and then you don't see the things for months other than the one like they're online that are graded and people want, you know, like $1,500 for them. But yeah, neither one of those come up very often at all. But for me, you know, those are sets I guess I'm passively working on them if for no other reason than it's not like I just go get them. I'm passively working on them because I can only buy them when I can see them. But again, in both of those cases, I believe those were really only distributed in the Indianapolis area.
Yep.
I'm assuming the cons were for the most part really in that Cincinnati, Pittsburgh area. I mean, I know that in some cases, you know, those are the teams you see in Cleveland. So again, that may be a regional and you know.
And Ken, you spent a few years living in Indianapolis. So I mean, how often did you see those cards when you were in Indy?
I really didn't know that much about them when I lived in Indy. I really didn't start collecting some of that old vintage IndyCar stuff until I moved to Texas. And all of a sudden, someday, I came upon one of the T36 cards, and I was like, I didn't even know these existed. And it's been all downhill from there.
So one other question that was asked that I was getting to, and I think Bo actually answered it before we got to it. But Peeps was asking, what are some of the here we go? What are the big food issue rookies? And the one that I was thinking of was the Red Lobster set, the Cubs Red Lobster team set. It actually has Ryan Sandberg's first card in it. Now, granted, it's if I'm not mistaken, it was a team card. He was on a team card, but I mean that I guess technically would still be his first card. So.
Is he a Cub or is he a Philly or is he Reading Philly?
It was his rookie year, and it was a Cub. Yeah.
Oh, it's the Sandberg card's a solo card of him in '82.
Well,
this was the Red Lobster set.
Right, but I'm just saying he's by himself. It's not a team card. It's a team issue card, but it's not a team card. He's by himself.
In the Red Lobster set?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Because I had the set, but I never actually opened it and looked at all the cards. I kind of sent it to somebody it belonged to. So
speaking of some of those solo cards, though, didn't some of those Burger King team sets, like they would have a solo rookie card of guys that were on those four-player cards? When they said Lou Whitaker, that kind of popped into my head. I don't remember if it was him, Trammell, Jack Morris, but I feel like one of those guys at least.
All of them.
All of them? Okay.
Well, it's Whitaker, Trammell, Morris, and Parrish, and they all have I believe they all have solo cards.
Gotcha.
And so that set really exploded in price when people realized, wait a second, it's a Jack Morris rookie, it's a Lou Whitaker rookie, it's an Alan Trammell rookie. So I mean, and then Parrish is a poor fourth, but he was a pretty good catcher in his day.
He was an all-star catcher. I mean,
yeah, many times.
Yeah.
I know I was excited when the Phillies signed him. That was going to be a big year, but
okay. Yeah, Bo said that he had two minor league cards with the Phillies. His first major league was the Red Lobster.
I would think Bo knows on that if it's a Cubs card.
Bo knows.
Yep.
Yeah, between Bo and Diego, I think we're covered on Ryan Sandberg.
Yeah. I honestly didn't even realize that Ryan Sandberg was even on the Phillies, even as minor.
And then in '83, I believe there's a Joe Carter, and Bo and Diego can verify. But he's let's say a very outside Hall of Fame chance, maybe a 5% Hall of Fame chance someday. But Joe Carter has, I believe, an '83 Red Lobster card or Thorn Valley. And again, it's a year before his rookie card. So it's interesting what was going on in Chicago in the early '80s.
Was Sandberg traded for Larry Boa? Is that who?
No, he was traded with Larry Boa.
Oh,
and for Ivan De Jesus.
Ivan De Jesus.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
There was a little bit of a thing going on there, right? Dallas Green ended up going to the Cubs, and he took with him a lot of people. Keith Moreland, Bob Denier, a lot of guys like that. Kind of began the downfall of the Phillies. So Exograph, you know what Exograph is, right, Rich?
Yeah, they made the 3D cards. That's why, as I said, the 71 Kellogg's is a variation. But, Exograph's first issue is the 68 Topps 3D test issue. And then there's the Kellogg's and the 70 Roll Gold, and then the rest of the Kellogg's.
And then they're the ones that rolled out Sport Flicks, right?
Correct.
And then they became. It's funny if you look at the Donruss Pinnacle family tree, Score family tree. It's all intertwined. Sport Flicks, the Kellogg's cards from the 70s, all that stuff. So it's really wild to see that. If you trace it back, it's like peeling off layer after layer of an onion. See where all that.
When I moved to Dallas, we had a dealer down here, and I liked him. He was a funny guy, but he had also served a year in jail because he tended to go dumpster diving at the Exograph factory. And yes, he got stuff from the Exograph factory, and some of the stuff that's come out over the years is because of his dumpster diving and his urine in the pen. But he was a cool guy. I believe he lived in Arkansas when I moved down here, but he would come down for all the big shows. And it was just fun hanging with him, hearing the stories. And I'm not saying that we support dumpster diving and crime. I'm just saying hearing the stories were cool.
Did he later work at Donruss and backdoor all that stuff out?
No, actually, he never worked for Donruss. He was always an independent sports card dealer.
I was just meaning all that stuff that was supposed to be destroyed and made it to the market or whatever.
To defend what happened with Pinnacle in the 97-98 period, they basically had the rug pulled out under them. I mean, they had about a month, but stuff sat there. And people took it home with them, just like Pro Set. I mean, I used to go garage sailing here, and about once every couple months, I'd meet somebody who worked at ProSet who always had interesting stuff. And the interesting stuff wasn't what you saw on the packs.
I moved down here way too late, it sounds like.
You got here way too late, Ken. You missed, well, but then again, you would have been about 10 years old when you really should have, when you should have moved down here.
Peeps is asking about Mother's Cookies there, right? There are a lot of famous players. No, a lot of Nolan Ryan Mother's Cookies cards.
Yeah, I don't off the top of my head remember any big names.
There's a Griffey set, and there's the guy who did most of the Mother's Cookies work, which is why you only see it limited to a few teams in the 80s and 90s. I believe his name was Wayne Bab. And Wayne was a photographer, and he did a lot of the work to get those photographs for the sets. And a lot of times that's also why you see the photographs all looking the same. And he had contacts in the hobby, and he got the cards out. So that's why when the hobby was super popular in those years, the overproduction era, you have only certain teams. That's why you don't have any East Coast teams in the Mother's Cookies. And don't forget, I believe Mother's Cookies did PCL cards in the late 40s and early 50s too.
Yes, 1953-ish.
Yes. And Remar bred in the PCL. I mean, there's a lot of PCL food issues. You want to, and a lot of them are pretty accessible to find, especially at the biggest shows.
Chuck Connors is in there, 1952 Mother's Cookies.
That's a good card.
$500 card, according to
That's a really good card.
The Rifleman.
He also played He also played in the NBA.
Yeah.
And I believe the story is he was the first player to ever destroy a rim while dunking.
Wow.
Shatter the backboard.
Yeah, he didn't shatter it, but I heard that I believe, and that it could be apocryphal, but he destroyed a rim while dunking.
Before Chuck Norris. Pretty sure.
So, okay, let's just go around the horn. Does anybody have a favorite individual food card? Like a card, not even a set, just for whatever reason. Is it nostalgic? Is it just it's your player or anything like that? I just figured we could go around the horn, and if anybody has them in chat, go ahead and type them in there, and let's share.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
I'm going to go with George Vukovic, Burger King Phillies card, because the ones I have probably still have the French fry grease on them, because it's, in there again, just same with the cereal, sitting there in Burger King, eating my French fries and playing with my baseball cards. It's,
So so you're saying that like you remember getting those, like were they in, like I know that a lot of the, I think like actually I don't know what the Kellogg's were in, but some of them were in like those the clear cellophane wrappers. What were the Burger King ones in?
This is it right here, because
okay,
yeah,
so that's like a clear cellophane kind of
cellophane, probably 2 or 3 cards in there. This one's got
Gotcha.
your Carlton. I got a ton of these back there that I got in a collection, but I also have the ones that I got when I was 12 years old at Burger King.
Mine's the 87. Mine's probably got to be the 87 Dale Murphy home plate heroes, just because he was my favorite then, and like I've talked for about 15 minutes out of the 50 we've talked about those home plate heroes. So even though it had no logo, I still love that one. Probably my all-time favorite food card.
Still eat Kraft macaroni and cheese?
Yeah, I really wish they put cards on there again, because that is the macaroni and cheese of choice in this house.
How about Rich?
Okay, I'm going to answer the question, and then I'm going to answer the other question that I didn't answer that. The first is, this has brought back the memories of having the 70 Kellogg's, McCovey, and I don't have them anymore, but the 70s McCovey and bank cards, which really introduced me to really cool cards. So on a instinctive level, those cards would probably be my favorite. And since I'm starting all over again, I probably will buy at least one of those cards at the next Dallas card show just to say I want to have one, because I get the chance to start all over again.
Is that going to actually make it into the very small PC?
Yeah, I think I'll keep one of them in the
Oh,
PC.
Okay. All right. So you'll be up to what, like 12 cards in your PC?
I have like 100 cards because they're all hobby related cards. I don't have a big PC. I have cards of hobby personages signed or unsigned, and that's become my PC. And the other thing I wanted to touch upon is my favorite group of sets were the post-serial cards, because a collection I don't want to say collection, an inventory I bought. This was I was about third down on the line, which was fine. I like buying leftovers. But I bought in 1983, and it cost me $1,200. So think about what that would be in today's money. I bought from my friend Tom Reed, my mentor in the business, basically Tough Series 57 to 72s, some oddball cards, and the Buck Barker collection of post-serial cards. And one of the few things I regret ever selling was I had a couple of the Buck Barker cards that had his name on the back with some of his writing. I should have kept one of those just because of the historical significance. That's one of the few things that I truly regret selling.
Those were blank backs, right? Because the stats
were blank backs, but Buck would write on the cards. He'd write about, the player's history on.
Really?
Oh yeah. If you see Buck Barker, he would, on some of these old tobacco cards, he'd write, what years they played for what minor league teams. Okay. And I mean, you can tell it's his handwriting, and believe it or not, normally those cards make it worthless. In this case, within the hobby, for those who know, it actually makes the card more valuable.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I know you have some of that with the T206 with the back stamps and stuff like that. There's people that, collect the back stamps in particular, try to put, or they have a certain stamp that they try to collect. So yeah, definitely see a lot of that.
There's a guy on Net 54 who collects a certain stamp on the back. He has like 300 different. And he's traced the family history of the guy whose cards he collected. It's a really cool story.
Is that the Hal McCormick stamp?
Yes, it is.
That's who I was thinking of when I said it, but I definitely know there are some other stamps out there as well.
Yes.
But yeah, that's definitely, there's the what is it? F. Scott Fitzgerald. We don't know if that's actually him or if it's just an old wives' tale. Is it? Okay.
It is him. And there are some other people too. One of the senators in Georgia, I think it was Senator Russell, donated cards to the museum, I believe, with his stamp, his childhood stamp on the back. They may be at the Ty Cobb Museum, but I mean, there are cards, and I think it's Senator, Herman can probably check this, but I'm pretty sure there's a senator who collected T206s and put his information on the back when he was a kid, not when he was senator.
I'm going to get a stamp and stamp all my T206s and wonder what happens.
Yeah, your house will burn down, dude. People come at you with pitchforks.
All right, Herman, you haven't answered.
Mine is, I kind of got two, but I'd say I've always liked the 86. Is it the Quaker Oats, Quaker Chewy? Dale Murphy.
Two Murphys. Who'd have thunk it?
Rich and I are looking for the Miralax cards in a couple of years. Target our generation. It's gonna be awesome.
Well, I'll third that.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the photo on that card. It's a headshot, and it's one of the few issue cards that I've seen that you're just talking about airbrushing like Panini does or whatever. A lot of the older ones didn't have like the team logos on them,
right?
But these do. So and it's prominent right up front, on the headshot. So.
By the way, changing topics for a second. I know one thing I've been really good about not buying until, after I sold everything, is tomorrow's Topps One. Is anybody else buying any Topps One this week?
I've got 2 boxes coming.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Baseball, the sport you don't follow, son.
Yeah, no. I did buy a couple racing boxes today, though.
Good. I Panini. I know sometimes you kid about Panini.
Oh no! Not this modern stuff.
Okay. Panini, but to Panini's defense, they do a really good job with racing.
No, I agree. I think they do a good job with racing. Now, if they would just get me my 3 Charles Barkley autographs that have been in redemption status for more than 2 years, and my 5 Alec Manoahs, then things would be just great, just swell. Reminds me, I guess I need to email Jeff.
Yeah, I've got 2 boxes coming, but by the end of the week, they'll be distributed to different households. So,
Jeff, when the Dallas Card Show was like a 20-table show, Jeff and I both used to set up at that show. And it was literally 25 cables, and Jeff used to do it, and he'd have like 50-cent and dollar boxes. Both of us came a long way from those days.
Are we talking about? I don't know if we're talking about the same Jeff.
We're talking about Jeff. Yeah, we're talking about Jeff, the guy that replaced Tracy.
Okay, all right. I guess I didn't know he had set up. I do want to ask Herman a question. You said your boxes are going to be distributed to other households. Does that mean USPS is going to deliver them to the wrong houses?
No, they're coming here tomorrow. But
consider yourself lucky. I'm still trying to get mail from a month ago that they say they delivered and didn't.
No, they'll be here tomorrow, but I'll open them, and the teams will go where they need to be.
Yeah,
I'm going to break 2 boxes with the group that I'm hoping that usually does it with me. So,
and I stopped at my truly local card store, the one 5 minutes from me, and I was told there'll be plenty of Topps ones. So at least and then I'll buy Heritage, and then I'll figure out where I go from there.
Oh, speaking of card shops, Rich, there's a new one. It's only been open for a couple months. About 15 minutes from me.
Cool. That's like 6 that's like there are 5 within a half hour from me, and you've got like 3 or 4. There are like a bunch now in DFW. There used to be almost none.
Yep. Just found them last week. I actually found them. Everybody will probably get a kick out of this. I actually found them through they sell on eBay, and I clicked on a particular item that I was looking at, and it said Arlington, Texas, and I was like, oh. And then I saw the name, and it sounded like it was a business, so I looked it up, and there it was, 10, 15 minutes from me.
Cool. All right, we are just about hitting our hour mark, so
yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. John, I want to thank you for jumping in here with us. And again, like I said, I'm sure I'll speak for Ken as well. But I mean, I enjoy videos. Keep it up, and we're gonna do everything we can to help you get your subscribers up. As far as what we can, it's not like we're like busting at the brim with subscribers ourselves. But if you would go ahead and just kind of tell everybody where they can find you, and I'll post your YouTube link in the chat again.
Well, I'm podcast pretty much everywhere. That's 70s Card Show on YouTube. That's 70s Card Show. Twitter at 70s Card. I do want to thank Ken. Ken's been a supporter of mine from the get-go, which I really appreciate. I don't know how he found me or why, but I appreciate it. And Rich, I bought cards from Rich, and I look forward to doing it again someday soon. Hopefully he can get a big enough inventory for me. But Rich has been great.
I will find stuff for you.
All right.
Yeah, hopefully you make it back down to Dallas.
Yeah, that'd be great. But yeah, I mean, Rich has been on my show as well. So we talked for an hour and probably an hour and a half, and it could have gone on for 5 hours. I think it was a fun.
And John asked really good questions. And Ken pointed out John asked really good questions. He said, "You found a way to ask me questions that told stories that nobody else had done before."
Oh, I appreciate that.
And I appreciate this. It's always fun. I know we barely touched the surface. Great chat. And it's a lot of fun talking. As you see, we barely touched the surface, and look at all the stuff in food issues. I mean, John has some really cool items he owns.
Mm-hmm.
I've owned a whole bunch of stuff over the years. And, a lot of the stuff is just really cool. And so we barely touched the surface. We could go another couple hours on food issues and not even be close. And I will say that when we were discussing this, I did reach out And there's going to be a gentleman, he says 6-7 months from retirement, who wrote a book on food issues of the 50s and 60s.
This is for Bo, by the way.
Oh.
He's asking where I live. So,
and so we will get him on at some point.
Yeah.
You know, it's to talk about food issues because he wrote the book.
Right.
get that
I think you actually shared the link to the book in the DMs, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
I
Well,
went,
you did. I think you did. I think, or Kim did.
Somebody, or no, it might have been Steph. It was Steph. But I actually picked it up and got started on it, which I'm only about 2 chapters in. But it so far, I mean, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, he did a really good job on it. Some of it's also been serialized on Sports Collectors Daily, so you can actually read some of it there too.
And I will say this: I am not a big book reader, so it's got to keep my attention if I'm going to read it. And so far, it has. So
okay.
All right, guys.
Thank you, gents.
I appreciate it. Everybody, thanks for joining. Chat was lively tonight. I appreciate that. Jump in and join us next week. And also, we're going to put together the roundtable this weekend for anybody that wants to join, either on screen or in chat. Feel free to shoot me a DM and we'll get you in there.
Well, as I said, I hope to be there, but I know Bo talked about this on his podcast. Wife and I are probably doing Valentine's Day on Saturday. Instead of overspending, last weekend, we're saving it for this weekend.
Well, me and my wife did the same thing last weekend. We did a weekend early, so
we're going to do it a weekend late.
That's fine.
Last night we had Chinese takeout on the sofa watching the Olympics. Don't tell me I don't know how to treat a woman.
By the way, Ken, guess what we had last night at home too?
Chinese.
Yes.
See, Rich knows how to treat a woman.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Take care and see you next week.
Okay. Bye-bye.